Committee of the Garden State Employment and Training Association for inviting me to speak at the 32nd Annual Conference. It's an honor to be here among such distinguished guests as Senator Cunningham and former Governor McGreevey. Let me begin by congratulating today's award winners, Whole Foods Market and Hudson County Correctional Director, Oscar Aviles. I'm personally proud of Director Aviles because he's helped to change the image in the field of correction. I know firsthand how difficult his job is. And when I was first asked to come and speak today, I was surprised and pleased that the community outside of correction understands and appreciates the beneficial relationship that can and should exist amongst the Department of Corrections, the employment community, and the one-stop and providers. When discussing reentry strategies, I think it's important that we first understand the difference between a jail and a prison. In a jail, inmates have a short length of stay while they undergo their legal process. In general, they'll remain in a jail setting until they're able to make bail, complete their court case, or have a sentence of less than a year. A prison, on the other hand, is for inmates who have been sentenced to a year or more. And because of that big difference in time, the strategies that each employ will be different. And today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the inmates that are going to be re-entering from the state system. Every year, we have some 10 to 11,000 inmates leave the state system and come back to the community. Governor Christie and a number of our legislators, including Senator Cunningham, have taken a number of steps to assist in reducing the recidivism level through effective reentry strategies. As I mentioned before, 10 to 11,000 inmates are re-entering the community each year, but what I didn't mention is at the same point in time, we still have roughly 9,000 to 10,000 inmates entering the system. As a result of the difference, New Jersey has seen a reduction in the population from approximately 30,000 inmates at the turn of the century to today of approximately 23,000 inmates. And over that same time period, the recidivism rate, which is measured by the number of inmates that return to state custody within 3 years, has reduced from some 48% to a current level of 32%. While this is significantly better than the national average, with the governor and the legislature's commitment to re-entry, I believe that we will continue to see this reduction in our recidivism rate, and that legislation policy initiatives such as expansion of the drug courts, bail reform, ban the box, drug program licensure, and educational benchmarks are all going to assist in that reduction in the future years. And let me be clear, none of these initiatives are about being soft on crime. It's about being smart on crime reduction and recidivism. I'm often asked what the biggest obstacles to successful inmate reentry are. And I would say that the major impediments would include sobriety, or lack thereof, lack of housing, lack of family reunification, and an inability to obtain employment. And since today we're here to focus on employment, I think it's appropriate to discuss a few of the challenges that an inmate faces when he's leaving our system and attempting to find employment. I'll first discuss some of the challenges that the offender faces when looking for employment. The most obvious challenge, having the necessary skills or education to be employable. But there are other factors as well, much more simple. An inmate often doesn't possess identification documents that are needed to place them on a payroll. They may not know where to look for an employment. They may not know how to complete an employment application, or things as simple as how to dress and behave during an interview, or how to answer difficult questions about their period of incarceration. Even if they can overcome those obstacles, they also need to overcome the negative stigma that comes with being a former inmate. Some of these challenges can be addressed within the Department of Corrections. Others simply cannot. Our system begins preparing the inmate for reentry as soon as they're admitted. Over the past few years, we've worked very successfully with the Office of Court Administration and the county jails to shorten the time period between when an inmate is sentenced to state prison and when he actually arrives. This is important because the time that an inmate remains in the county jail awaiting transfer is time that could be spent on programming. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a difference between the programming that's required at a county jail for a shorter length of stay and the program that will be required for an inmate that's going to be sentenced to prison. As soon as an inmate arrives at one of our DOC reception centers, they immediately undergo testing to establish their mental, physical, and addiction status. Their education level and their vocational skills are assessed, and they're evaluated to determine not only the most appropriate housing, but also the most appropriate programming. Much of the programming that we undertake either directly or indirectly assists in developing a better job candidate. I mentioned sobriety earlier. We have some 1,300 beds in our secure facilities and another 1,600 beds in our halfway houses that are dedicated to substance abuse. We also address issues such as anger management, effective parenting, resume writing, and conflict resolution in the workplace. Again, as I mentioned before, many inmates lack the most basic identity documents. Our social service staff works not only at providing the necessary program, but we also assist inmates in obtaining documents that are necessary to gain employment. These documents include things such as a social security card, a birth certificate, military documents, a motor vehicle identification card. While these seem like basic documents to the general public, when you've been incarcerated for a period of time, they're not readily available. This can be a difficult task, obtaining these documents, because many of the inmates are self-identified and they don't necessarily have the points that would be required for something like a motor vehicle identification card. Even if we overcome those obstacles, and we do, they still don't have the funding in many cases to purchase the documents. The fact that you're incarcerated does not waive those costs, and we work very closely with a number of our funders to try to come up with funding and to offset those costs. And there's no free lunch. If an inmate is going to get a free identity document, they achieve it by completing a program such as our STARS program, which is a 12-week program that helps an inmate to address the obstacles to reentry. After they successfully complete that program, they'll be funded. The department will then fund through a grant those identity documents for them. Earlier, when I talked about impediments to successful reentry, one thing you'll notice I didn't mention was education. And while education is a major emphasis within the department, DOC provides education and programming with the ultimate objective of the inmate obtaining employment. So we look at education as a means to employment, and employment a means to reduced recidivism. And in terms of education, we serve four major groups. We have the basic literacy group that we are mandated now to bring to a 9th grade reading level. We have inmates in vocational training. We have inmates who are seeking either a high school diploma or a GED. And we also have inmates taking privately funded college courses. With regard to vocational education, we offer approximately 25 vocational programs, such as culinary arts, forklift operator, fiber optic cabling, and HVAC repairs. We work collaboratively with the Department of Labor to ensure that our vocational programs are providing skills for trades that are on the top 50 high demand, high wage list. Our curriculum and our certification of our instructors meet the same requirements as all vocational technical schools. With regard to GED preparation, with the 70% pass rate, New Jersey DOC is amongst the most successful entities in the state in terms of preparing students for those exams. Additionally, in the area of higher education, working with private foundations and various colleges, eligible inmates are afforded the opportunity to take coursework leading to a college degree. Over 1,300 individuals have enrolled in these courses. In fact, it's worth noting that 2 of our former inmates are Truman Scholars now. And if you know anything about education, a Truman Scholar is truly one of the most difficult grants to achieve. As you can see, the department has many ways to help inmates prepare for reentry, but we also have to rely on the community to provide them with assistance as well. This is where the residential community release programs, the one-stop centers, and our volunteers are essential. Our 2,600-bed RCRP, or halfway house program, allows us to begin transitioning appropriate inmates back to the community. A number of these programs are focused on job training and employment. The DOC also works closely with the Department of Labor, the halfway houses, and our various facilities to utilize the one-stop centers where an inmate can assess information relative to potential employment. And I'd be remiss if I didn't credit our some 1,400 volunteers who give their assistance each week at our facilities in terms of tutoring and religious mentoring. Finally, one of the greatest impediments that an offender faces when re-entering the workplace is simply the label and stigma of being a former inmate. If you believe that meaningful employment is a key to reducing the recidivism rate, then I think we have to agree that we have to improve our strategies for that reentry program. Recently enacted legislation, such as ban the box, can help. But in the end, in the real end, it takes a real commitment on the part of prospective employers to hire the most qualified person for the job, even if that happens to be a former inmate. Forums such as these are an opportunity to change an employer's perspective concerning an inmate's ability to contribute to their organization. And I hope that there are more occasions such as this where the community comes together to discuss the issues surrounding inmate reentry. Again, I'd like to congratulate our award recipients and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.